Hi all, this is Dana here. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to assemble the little ornament pattern, the Joy Piece family pattern. So obviously first you're going to be wanting to stitch the pattern. The pattern is suggested for 14 count Aida fabric, but of course you can use any size fabric that you like. It's just the finished sizes and such will be slightly different if you use something other than 14 count. So first, you can see I've started right in the middle of the pattern. For me, for these types of patterns, it's easier to start in the middle. I do have a video about how to start in the center of the pattern if you're not sure. I'll put a link to that in the video description. So for this pattern, it's roughly the top of the second hump of the M that's the center of the pattern, as you can see in the picture there. So after you've finished stitching, and you've done all your lovely stitching and your back stitch, then you're going to want to collect your materials. So for this one I have a second piece of the same Aida fabric for the back. You can use any fabric you like. You can even use like a really pretty decorative fabric if you'd like. And I've also gotten some quilt batting. I've got 2 layers of that. It's the same size as the finished piece. You can also just use cotton stuffing or anything that you would use to stuff, like a stuffed toy or something like that as well. You don't necessarily have to use the flat quilt batting. And of course I've got a piece of ribbon, which is what I'm going to be hanging it with. I've chosen quite a wide ribbon for this demonstration, but of course you can use a sparkly ribbon, you could use a really nice cord, and you can actually make the hanger any length that you like. In this one it's probably about 6 inches long in total, and then once it gets sewn together it's about 4 or 5 inches long. So as you can see, I've got everything cut out ready to go, and the first step once everything is cut to size is you're going to be wanting to pin the ribbon to the top edge of your stitched piece. So you're going to want to make sure it's dead center, so you can either carefully fold your piece in half and not creasing it to find the center, or use a measuring tape to find the center. And also make sure that if you're using a wider ribbon like I am, make sure that it's hanging dead straight down. Otherwise, when you stitch your seams together, it could end up hanging off kilter slightly. One thing you are going to want to take care of too is to make sure that if your ribbon is longer than the length of the actual piece, to make sure it's tucked up when you're going to be stitching around the edges, which I'll show you in a moment. Otherwise you could actually get the top of the ribbon hanger caught up in the seam. So make sure that's folded up and out of the way of your seams when you start stitching as well. So yeah, you pin that in place there. And then what you do in the next step is you would put your second piece, your backing piece, over top of your first piece, and so you're basically sandwiching that ribbon in between. If you're using a decorative fabric for the back piece, you would want to make sure that the right side is facing in, so the 2 right sides of the fabrics will be facing in towards each other. So as you can see, I've got some arrows on that picture. So what it's been indicating is you'd be stitching around the 3 sides and then up just a little bit on the 4th side to help turn your fabric. With Aida fabric it's a little bit stiff, so I left a little bit more of an opening so that I could easily turn it. But if you're using a more flexible fabric to either stitch on or as your backing fabric, you can even close that up a little bit more and you'll still be able to turn it fine. So as you can see, I've sewn all the way around the 3 and roughly 1/4 sides. And in the next piece what I've done is I've just clipped the corners. That makes turning your fabric easy. You'll want to make sure you don't clip right directly to the edge of the stitching. You want to leave like a millimeter or 2 extra. Otherwise you could actually end up clipping your stitching, which wouldn't be very much fun when you try to turn it. So in the next photo you can see that I've turned the piece, I've given it a little press with the iron, and what I've actually done too is where the opening is I've actually turned that inside and pressed it down. That will make doing the blind stitch a lot easier, or slip stitch as it's also called. I do actually have another video as well about how to do a slip stitch, so again that will be in the video description. So if you're not sure how to do that stitch to close up your finished seam, then do check out that video and that will help. So obviously once you've pressed your little seams down, you're going to want to stuff your ornament, whether that's with your quilt batting or with cotton batting. You can use as much or as little as you like. You can make it really, really poofy, or if, even if you wanted, you could leave the fourth side completely unsewn and actually put a thin piece of card in there if you wanted it to be flat. And so in the last picture you can see I'm stitching up the seam with the slip stitch. It's quite a simple stitch to do, and it's actually a really handy stitch to do. I use it a lot for hemming and things like that and other projects, so if you don't know how to do it, it is actually a really useful stitch to learn, and that will help keep your stitching nice and flat, and it won't look any different than the rest of the seams going around it, so you won't really be able to tell where you turned your fabric and where that extra seam was. And in the finished pictures here, you can see the finished project. You can see I have left the ribbon hanger a little bit long on this one, and in the next picture here you can see a bit of a detail of the stitching and how it's all come together. So yeah, that's how to assemble this pattern. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment on the video and I'll get back to you. You can see that it can be used for anything from using it as a Christmas ornament. It's really lovely hung on a tree. Or you can even use it around your home, like hung off of a doorknob or on a nice hook on the wall. It can be used for a lot of different things. You could even stitch it without the ribbon and use it as a pincushion, which is another alternative as well. So that's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed making this little pattern, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Bye for now!